You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm always hungry.
This is like your theme song.
Okay, so full disclosure, Carol just gives me the hardest time because I'm literally always eating.
Always eating. I look over, and this guy is like as thin as could be.
Well, I'm always looking for any excuse to make food part of our program, part of our show.
I know. Just like I'm always looking for wine to make part of our show.
Yeah.
You're always looking.
Hey, it's yin and yang. It works, okay? To that end, we got Norma Chu with us. She's a financier turned culinary entrepreneur, formerly the head of HSBC Private Bank, who decided after a few years of banking to make her pivot and start DayDayCook. It's now a publicly traded company with her at the helm. She joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Norma, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Tim. It's really glad to be here.
Well, you've got a really interesting story. So before we get into, talking more about what exactly you're doing day to day, just give us the big picture and how you ended up leaving banking to become an entrepreneur.
Wow. And that takes me back 13 years ago when I first started the company. Growing up, I've always had two passions, which is the stock market and cooking. I grew up watching the Bloomberg, CNBC. And so after graduating from UW, I grew up in Seattle. I was in investment banking for a couple of years and then got into equity research. But moving back to Hong Kong, I then realized a lot of my friends didn't really cook. And for me, growing up in the US, I really enjoy cooking. Cooking has always been a big part of me connecting with my family and friends. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to create something that promote cooking for future generation. And so I started DayDayCook. And in the beginning of the business, we really focused on creating short form video content, promoting very easy to follow home cooking recipes. And over the years, we kind of following that mission to promote Asian cooking culture to the world. We started as media and then later on doing media content commerce. And a few years back, I decided to launch private label branded products. That's kind of the evolution of the business to date.
There's so much competition out there, and there was a period where I felt like there were all these different types of food services that, would teach you how, provide the products and so on and so forth. How do you kind of find your niche in that space so that you could find a sustainable business? I mean, you've been doing it since 2012. Mm-hmm. So what has been your approach to kind of keep the business going, keep it sustainable?
I think it's really just, being open-minded and being aware in terms of what's happening out there, what's happening in the industry and with our consumers, and having a very positive mindset. Competition, I think, is everywhere, and as long as it's an industry that is attractive, there's going to be competition. But we see it as a positive light. The more people that come into the space, we're going to grow this space together, and really look at it from a collaborative manner, and seeing this opportunity and really acting on it. So, for example, even though we started DayDayCook in Hong Kong, then into mainland China, back in 2022, I decided to start venturing and looking into other opportunities elsewhere, and really coming back to the US that year, I really realized, wow, there's a huge demand for consumer looking for convenience meal solutions, mm-hmm. with a focus in Asian cuisine. So I thought, okay, that's a great opportunity. How can we take advantage of it? And so I started talking to people in the industry, and later on really meeting some very interesting founder in the space. So I got to know Nona Lim, which ended up a few months later became our very first acquisition here in the US market. And now, a month ago, we also completed our second acquisition here in the U.S. So I think that's just an example of, being open-minded and aware of what's happening, seizing opportunity with a very positive attitude.
So where are you doing production here in the U.S. in terms of actually creating the meals, getting them out to and they're
like
available.
The co-packers, right?
Yeah, they're available in grocery stores around
Yes.
the country. But where are you doing the manufacturing?
So all of the products are mainly made in the U.S. right now, and then we have some international co-packing partners. Mm-hmm. So under the Nona Lim products, we have some products coming in from Singapore, and recently we also helped on the R&D and product innovation side of things, and we launched some new clean label cup noodle products coming from mainland China. But for now, most of the products are really made in the U.S.
How profitable is it? In other words, what is it? I don't know. What can you tell us and share? We're Bloomberg. We're so into it. You said it kind of, grew up or, watched certainly Bloomberg and some of our competitors. But how profitable is this business? Are you profitable?
Yeah. So, we announced our third quarter 2023 numbers last Friday. So we have been EBITDA positive for 2 quarters now, the markets shift, and investor also, the focus also shifts sometimes. And for what we see in terms of trends, in terms of managing fast-growing food companies, growing profitably has become really important. I think maybe a couple years, maybe 3 to 5 years ago, growing at all costs was kind of the trend.
Correct.
But in the past 2-3 years, most of the founders that we talked to, including ourselves, including myself, the focus has really shifted to creating products that have healthy margins and finding distribution partner and channels that's sustainable.
Right.
That's really the key here, and that's what we're doing, and that's who we're looking to continue to partner with.
It's so interesting that you ended up IPOing back in November of 2023. So you've only been a public company for a few months at this point, but it's so interesting that you took the public company route. Because in the space that you're in, oftentimes what happens is a huge CPG company would come in and buy you. And we see that, with Siggy's yogurt, for example, or Justin's peanut butter, for example. Why was the IPO the right route rather than getting gobbled up by a bigger company?
So I truly believe, even though I've been doing this for 13 years, this is just the beginning of how I want to build and grow this company. A couple years ago, I decided to start this go public journey, and it's been a very rewarding path so far. And the thought process really is about finding the right platform, taking the company to the next stage to allow us to grow through acquisition and buying more brands. And instead of being bought out, my view is what we're creating here, I want to build a cross-generation company. I want to become, for example, the General Mills for Asian cooking, if you will.
Wow.
So
you're going to stay in that vertical,
yes,
right?
That's right. We want to be very focused, continue to attract more quality brands in the consumer and the convenient meal solution space with a focus on Asian cooking.
Direct to consumer, do you do any, or is it all you're going to find it in stores?
Right now, most of our brands are available in stores. We do a fair amount, a smaller portion in direct to consumer. Current limitation is really at the product format. So, for example, Nona Lim is mainly, traditional retailers because the product format is chill and frozen.
Got it.
But now that we've launched shelf stable, it's a lot more flexible.
What's the top line growth?
Crop line growth, we are, it's very attractive, and we're really exciting about all these
Doubling
opportunities.
the business in the last year? Like, what can you tell us in terms of that?
Some of the brands that I'll give you, maybe I'll answer the question this way. Right now, we are still, in the high growth state, and then we are looking for a lot of partners to join the platform now that we were newly listed. And some of the growth criteria that we look at least minimum, around 20% growth. Of course, that varies, right? If we talk to smaller brands, they're starting out, still have a lot of upside. The growth we could be looking at 40-50%. But if we're talking to a potentially bigger, more influential and established partner, then 20% really makes sense.
You're based in China, but you're traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Is there any chance that you would move the company headquarters back here to the U.S.?
I think, we are having an open-minded discussion right now amongst the management team. So it's possible that, we relocate the business and the headquarters elsewhere, depending on the shift in the revenue mix in the next, 2-3 years.
So it would depend on the revenue mix of geographic revenue mix?
That's right.
You are in New York. Benchmark just today initiated coverage at a buy with an $8 price target. We did mention the stock, right? Popped today.
6% today.
6%. 30 seconds left here. What is it that the analyst community most kind of press you on?
I think, for me, it's just really focusing on executing on our growth strategy. We're newly listed. It's time for me to stay focused on the business and deliver on what we say we're going to do, which is growing internationally and expanding our multi-brand product portfolio.
What's your biggest market right now?
Biggest market is still the mainland China market.
Mainland China. What do you think will be in maybe a couple of years your biggest market? Still mainland China?
The highest growth right now is in the U.S., and I would put my bet in the U.S. market.
All right. Really interesting stuff. So stay in touch. We'd love to hear more as you continue to move on this journey. Norma
Thank
Chu
you so
with
much.
us. Yeah, founder of DayDayCook, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Well, this is a story you and I feel like we talk about this a lot.
Yeah, fair to say it's kind of been top of mind. That is what's in our drinking water. For me, at least, I don't know what spurred you to think about this. It was a Bloomberg News article that came out a couple of weeks ago. It noted that researchers have found that bottled water contains previously undetected nanoplastics. Here's why we're concerned, Carol. Nanoplastics pose a greater threat to human health than microplastics because they're small enough to penetrate human cells enter the bloodstream, and impact organs. Nanoplastics can also pass through the placenta to the bodies of unborn babies.
Yeah, it kind of freaked us out, to be quite honest. So we wanted to bring on a guest to talk to us about contaminants in drinking water overall, whether it's nanoplastics, lead, and more, which we know lead has continued to be a problem in some areas of the United States. Very pleased to welcome Natalie Exum. She is assistant scientist in the Department of Environmental Health at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Of course, the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. She joins us on Zoom from Baltimore. We're so delighted to have you here with us. So a lot to talk about. How worried do we need to really be, whether we're drinking water off a fountain at work or in an airport or water coming into our home? Give us kind of the big macro picture, if you would.
I'm delighted to be here, and thanks for letting me talk about something that I love so much. So drinking water from a fountain or drinking water from a tap in the United States is remarkably safe. We have excellent environmental legislation under the Safe Drinking Water Act to ensure that many contaminants of concern that can get us sick and send us to the bathroom and vomiting and other contaminants of concern are not in our drinking water. The things that do concern me, both as a scientist and as a mother, are for the contaminants you mentioned, specifically lead or some of these emerging contaminants of concern that we as society have developed chemicals so quickly that we don't even, we know what they do to make our, say, consumer products more effective, but we don't know what they're doing once we get exposed to them kind of consistently and chronically throughout our lives. So I would say that, turn on your tap, in your home when you go home and rest assured that it is remarkably safe. But I think we also need to get smart about how we do drink our drinking water. And if you're concerned about lead, flushing our pipes in the morning is probably a good idea, because water that's been sitting in a pipe that may contain lead in it overnight may have higher amounts of lead in it than if you were to flush it. So we need to get smart about our drinking water.
Okay, so let's
know
talk
what the hazards are.
Let's talk a little bit about lead, and then I want to get to some of these newer chemicals. The
Sure.
EPA has proposed a rule that all lead service line pipes in the U.S. be replaced within the next 10 years. I got to tell you, I didn't know about this rule until today when I was doing research for this interview. But I'm so shocked that lead pipes still exist, because here in New York, they were banned more than 60 years ago. Where is this an issue right now?
Well, I mean, you did. That's great research. There are 9 million lead service lines. That's what the EPA estimates still in the United States. The thing about these lines is that they were mostly laid in the 1920s. And if you were living, especially in an older city, say New York or Baltimore or Detroit, where they were booming, those cities were really expanding in the early 1900s with industry. Well, lead lines were so easy to use, because if you had a stump or a rock or you needed to kind of make a connection, it's really nice to bend lead lines and make them easy to use when you're building out houses really quick. So I would say, even though they were banned in the 60s, we have, the average pipe age in Baltimore is 75 years old. Wow. So we really do have a lot underground that we don't see that can be a concern.
So, you said flush the line. How long do you flush the line in the morning? Because sometimes I am torn between being an environmentalist, and I've had people on here about water conservation.
This isn't California, Carol.
No,
you can flush the line. Okay?
I've had family members from California who are like, stop running the water.
No, you're not supposed to take showers in California.
So help me out. So Natalie, help me out here. So I do sometimes run my shower initially, because I do live in a city just a stone's throw from Lower Manhattan, and I know there are old pipes still in the system. I've replaced all my plumbing, but once we get out of my house, I'm still nervous about some of the stuff that's coming in. How long do you flush the pipe in the morning?
Yeah, so if what we're worried about is lead consumption or drinking water, I would say flushing your kitchen sink is good to do before you fill up your coffee maker. Flush that line so that the water that's coming in is that kind of fresh water from the main line. And so
is it just color? Is it just coloration that you're looking for?
It's not color at all.
So
honestly,
how long do you flush?
I as a public health practitioner, it's hard for me to prescribe it for everyone. It will vary.
Yeah.
But I would say actually it's nice in the wintertime. You can put your finger under the water, and the water that's been sitting overnight would actually be warmer because your house is warmer. So when you feel that temperature change to being really cold, it's coming in fresh.
I like that. I like that really cold water anyway. I got to be honest.
So you wait for it to
Yeah, I always wait for it. Okay, we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to talk about PFAS and other chemicals.
Go.
So
Important.
you said there are chemicals that we use in our consumer products that are now getting into our water system. What do we need to know about this, and how do we protect ourselves at home from nanoplastics, microplastics, and PFAS?
Yeah, two very different problems here. And I only have 2 minutes. The nanoplastic problem is one that is really everywhere. There are plastics in everything, and so I'm going to leave that one aside. For PFAS right now, these forever chemicals that are extremely that bioaccumulate, they're extremely hard to break down in the environment. Those are of active concern right now for drinking water utilities, because the Environmental Protection Agency is putting together some very, very low limits, these maximum contaminant limits that are going to be extremely protective for public health. And so I would say, because they're on the radar so much, there is going to be this kind of treatment level protection for the population very soon. That doesn't mean that you still have to think about how you might want to use point of use protection,
Right.
and granulated activated carbon that is also helps reduce lead. So these point of use devices, I think, are going to be really important for us to think through in the future and today to get rid of these forever chemicals. Microplastics, it's going to be a longer answer for you.
You can come back. You can come back. Before you go, though, we have 20 seconds. We have 10 seconds. A couple water filters that you can recommend.
Yeah, I say look for the NSF/ANSI-53, and that's a good one for your lead reduction.
So helpful.
We got to get the doctor back.
Natalie, thank you so much. She's assistant scientist in the Department of Environmental Health at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Thank you.